March 7, 1815. Exiled Emperor of France, Napoleon Bonaparte, has escaped from his exile on the island of Elba and landed on the French mainland at Golfe Juan. King Louis XVIII of France sends the 5th Regiment to intercept and detain him. Napoleon meets the 5th Regiment dismounted and, ripping his coat open, states, "If there is any man among you who would kill his emperor, here I stand." Voices within the ranks begin to shout, "Long live the emperor." The 5th Regiment lowers their weapons and joins Napoleon. Marshal Michel Ney, who promised King Louis he would bring Napoleon back in an iron cage, joins Napoleon along with his men. Every step Napoleon and Ney take towards the city of Paris, similar events play out, growing Napoleon's army. The disliked King Louis realizes he has little political backing and flees to Belgium. The Congress of Vienna, taking place at the time, was an international diplomatic conference to reconstitute the European political order after Emperor Napoleon's exile in 1814. The Congress of Vienna's goal was to provide a long-term peace plan for Europe. However, it was going so poorly, new wars were on the verge of breaking out. When the Congress of Vienna heard of Napoleon's escape, fear gripped the 4 great powers: the United Kingdom, Austria, Russia, and King Louis XVIII's France immediately put aside their differences and declared Napoleon an outlaw. On March the 25th, the Treaty of Alliance against Napoleon is ratified by the Congress, effectively declaring war on Napoleon the man rather than a nation. Despite desiring peace, Napoleon is now forced to go to war. Napoleon concludes his best bet is to take a quick offensive against the coalition, win a strategic victory, and then sue for peace. The nearest coalition armies are the Duke of Wellington's Anglo-Allied army and Field Marshal Blucher's Prussian army, both of which are stationed in Belgium. June the 16th. Napoleon invades the Netherlands north of Charleroi. Napoleon sends his left wing, under Marshal Ney, to delay Wellington at Quatre Bras, while he focuses his attention on Blucher at the Battle of Ligny. The French win the battle, forcing the Prussians to retreat. Napoleon sends his right wing, under Marshal Grouchy, to press Blucher's retreat in an attempt to keep him from joining Wellington. The following morning, Wellington learns of Blucher's defeat and moves his army north in the heavy rains near the village of Waterloo. Napoleon links up with Marshal Ney and pursues Wellington. Wellington receives word from Blucher that he intends to march the following day and reinforce him at Waterloo. With this knowledge, Wellington decides to stay and fight. The contending armies, though similar in size, are different in quality. Wellington's army consists of an assortment of British, German, and Dutch troops, many of which are untested. Napoleon's army is well trained and experienced. On the morning of June the 18th, Marshal Grouchy is pinned down by a rearguard action of Blucher's army. With Marshal Grouchy pinned, the bulk of Blucher's troops march towards Waterloo. Wellington's army is positioned on a long ridge. He deploys his infantry in a line along the back slope, behind the crest of the ridge to conceal movements and troop strength. In front of the ridge, Wellington fortifies 3 farmhouses: Hougoumont on the extreme right, Le Haye-Saint near the centre, and Papelotte on the extreme left. Wellington's position presents a daunting task for Napoleon's troops to effectively attack. Unable to see Wellington's positions, Napoleon deploys his forces symmetrically. The previous day's heavy rain has muddied the ground of Waterloo considerably. This gives an advantage to Wellington as the defender. The mud will hinder cavalry and artillery movements, while also making artillery less effective by mitigating its ability to bound shots through enemy ranks. Napoleon decides to wait to allow the ground some time to dry before commencing the battle. At 11 o'clock, Napoleon orders a feint against Wellington's right in order to force his reserves away from the main objective of breaking Wellington's centre. At 11:20 on the morning of June the 18th, the first shots of the Battle of Waterloo ring out. Four light companies consisting of troops from the 1st Battalion of the 2nd Nassau Regiment, detachments of Jaegers, the Coldstream Guards and the Scots Guards hold Hougoumont through fierce, close combat. Eventually they are relieved by the 71st Highlander Infantry Regiment. What started as a feint turns into an all-day battle, with Napoleon committing significant resources to this engagement. At 11:50, Napoleon's Grand Battery of 80 guns begins to bombard Wellington's lines, causing significant casualties. At 1 p.m, Napoleon commences his first major infantry assault on Wellington Centre. The French infantry are met with devastating musket fire. Before the French can position themselves, the British heavy cavalry charges, crushing the attack. The British, in their success, over-pursue and become enveloped by a countercharge of French cavalry, costing them severe casualties. At 4 p.m, Marshal Ney mistakes the movement of casualties to the rear as a retreat at Wellington's right centre. Ney orders a massive cavalry charge, numbering nearly 15,000.
Marchez! Marche! Rapide!
Without artillery or infantry support, the charge becomes a costly mistake. The British infantry are formed into squares, prepared for the French cavalry. Wave after wave is repulsed by the British. At around 6 p.m, the French capture the centre stronghold of La Haye-Sainte. Napoleon moves artillery to La Haye-Sainte and begins a bombardment of Wellington's centre, pushing his lines to the brink. At the same time, Prussians begin to arrive en masse, pressuring Napoleon's flank to a breaking point. With both armies in danger of losing the battle, Napoleon commits his last reserves, the most proven and feared troops in Europe, his elite Imperial Guard. By 7:30 p.m, 3,000 Imperial Guardsmen march to attack Wellington Centre. The Imperial Guards push many Allied troops back. The destructive fire from Allied artillery and muskets proves too great. When the Guards crest the ridge, 1,500 British rise from concealment and fire point-blank volleys into the Guard. With crippling losses and fresh Allied troops preparing to charge by the bayonet, the Imperial Guard breaks. The news swiftly spreads throughout Napoleon's entire army. La garde recule, sauve qui peut. The Guard is retreating, every man for himself. Napoleon's army disintegrates. Wellington, seeing the Guard retreat, orders a general advance. The Allied troops pursue the retreating French at the bayonet. Napoleon barely escapes from the Allied army pursuit. Eventually, Napoleon would abdicate and surrender. He is exiled to the Atlantic island of St. Helena to live out the rest of his days.
La mort n'est rien, mais vivre vaincu et sans gloire, c'est mourir tous les jours.